Every day from then on, Miss Harris kept bragging about her fiancé. He was highly educated and well off, coming from a reputed family that lived in a luxury residential area in the city.
I'll invite you, Miss Thompson, to my wedding as your last chance to see something splendid.
I had no intention of attending such an event. I didn't care about seeing her in her wedding dress, and I was sure I'd be seated with the other female employees. No matter how glamorous the venue or how delicious the food might be, I didn't want to go. As I was thinking that, Miss Harris said,
"Oh, right. I'll show you a picture of his house,"
and started operating her smartphone.
Found it. This is it.
Saying that, Miss Harris brought her smartphone screen closer to me. There was a house I recognized.
It's amazing, isn't it? The luxurious and wonderful house is his family home. They must be incredibly wealthy.
Miss Harris was saying, but my eyes did not leave the screen of her smartphone.
Oh my, are you surprised? If you want, I can show you pictures inside the house as well.
When she slid the photo, a sight I was even more familiar with appeared.
It's a luxurious house that you, Miss Thompson, probably couldn't even dream of entering. Are you envious?
Cutting off what she was saying, I hurriedly spoke. This is actually my family home. My name is Kimberly Thompson, an employee at a small to medium-sized company. I am already 34 years old, but still single. I've been working at the company, where I got a job right after graduating college, for over 12 years now. Being the oldest among the female employees, I'm in a position often referred to as the old maid. And all the other women who joined the company at the same time as me have left after getting married. In other words, I'm the only one who kept working there. It is not that I'm working there to find a husband. I just diligently work every day. I tend to keep to myself and like being alone, and I'm not very good at socializing. So, from the perspective of those around me, I'm undoubtedly a stick in the mud. But I'm serious about my work, and because I've been at the company for a long time, it seems like the other employees treat me carefully with some respect. Well, I can understand their feelings. I don't go to any social events with my coworkers, and I don't exchange contact information with anyone. I don't hang out in my private life, and I only engage in conversation when absolutely necessary. So it's no wonder they find me boring and don't bother inviting me. But because I've been at the company for a long time, and I'm good at my job, they can't complain. I'm quite a senior. I think that's the kind of awkwardness I bring. As for me, I actually find it convenient not being approached by others. I can work in peace, and I can spend my breaks freely. Plus, this job doesn't involve any entertaining or client-facing tasks. So I'm not caught up in any troublesome human relations drama. And I can spend my days off watching as much of my favorite anime as I want. I also like reading, so going to the bookstore and impulse buying books based on their covers is enjoyable. At first glance, some people might feel that my life is lonesome and empty, but I thought this quiet yet peaceful life made me feel happy. However, everything started to change when a young woman joined the company. She was the complete opposite of me, a friendly, cheerful woman with excellent communication skills. Her name is Michelle Harris. Miss Harris was the type to actively approach others, and she seemed particularly popular among the male employees. She was cute and charming, so I figured she easily captured the hearts of the men. When I watched her, I felt like I was watching a character from a movie because she was so different from me. A bright, honest woman at the center of the group. Probably the type of woman I would have a hard time dealing with. While thinking such things, I happened to overhear a group of female employees chatting away cheerfully in the restroom. This all happened when they came into the restroom while I was in there, fixing their makeup and freely starting to gossip and complain. "You know that new girl, Harris? Don't you just find her annoying?" "I know, right? She seems just like she's trying to please men, doesn't she? definitely gives off that vibe. That has to be on purpose, right? She's constantly trying to appear cute. It's so annoying. Her only appeal is that she's young, isn't it? She can't even do her job properly. Isn't it embarrassing to just chase men all the time? Such harsh words. It's only natural that a new employee can't do their job as well. Moreover, I thought to myself that maybe Harris has to rely on the male employees because you guys aren't properly teaching her how to do her job. I have a habit of occasionally observing Harris, who is so different from me in appearance and personality. I have seen her being coldly dismissed by the female employees several times. Every time, Harris looked downhearted and ended up talking to a male colleague. So I don't think she's trying to win over the men. She's just cornered into such situations. I'm sure these female employees gossip about me too, just with different content. If Harris is spoken about like this, I'm sure I get it worse. I'm probably just not seeing it because I'm the oldest among the female employees and can do my job well. Interpersonal relationships can be so exhausting. I'm glad I don't have to get involved. Thinking that, I sat on the toilet until they finished fixing their makeup and left. Then, on another day, Harris was unusually mingling and talking with the female employees. I was surprised but glad to see her fitting in with the other women and decided to take my lunch break. As I got up from my seat to go outside with my packed lunch, as usual, I passed by them, and Harris suddenly called out to me. When I turned around, she asked me a nonsensical question. "Why aren't you married, ma'am?" It's clearly a malicious question. As I was struggling to answer, I could hear the female employees behind Harris chuckling. Even the wide-eyed male employees started to laugh. Led on by them. One of the female employees said, "Hey, that's rude," but then praised Harris, saying, "You're such a funny girl, Harris." From then on, Harris started to ask me more and more disrespectful questions that left me at a loss for answers, thinking she would be praised for making fun of me. "Miss Thompson, have you ever had a boyfriend? How many years have you not had a boyfriend? How many people have you been with? Are you by any chance not interested in men?" Harris kept asking me these personal questions without considering my feelings at all, and the level of disrespect only increased over time, and the surrounding employees seemed to find it amusing, encouraging Harris as if they wanted her to do more. I suppose she was happy to be recognized as one of them by the other female employees. Trying to meet their expectations, she kept intensifying her remarks to me. As things escalated, she began to flaunt her own status to me. "My boyfriend just gave me a designer bag as a gift the other day. I'm going to a high-end restaurant tonight that's booked out for the next 6 months. Do you just eat macaroni and cheese at home, Thompson?" This kind of petty one-upmanship had been her modus operandi. "Miss Thompson, you don't seem to have any connection with luxury items. How pathetic," she would throw in with her sarcasm. Rather than feeling angry, I was beginning to find it impressive. As this silly back and forth went on, I found myself increasingly burdened with Miss Harris's work. Miss Harris, who was rather overbearing, had an invincible disregard for fear. The other female employees seemed unable to deal with her, and she rapidly turned into a monster. Then one day, after some time had passed, something happened. When Miss Harris came to work, she was very upbeat and started talking to me. "I got engaged." As she said this, she showed me a picture of her fiancé, even though I hadn't asked. When I responded with a polite, "That's nice," and tried to return to my work, Miss Harris continued to chatter on. "My fiancé is really rich, kind, handsome, and perfect. Are you jealous? I'm going to be happy leaving you here, Miss Thompson." With that, she brought her smartphone screen closer to me. She continually belittled me and bragged about how amazing her fiancé was and how she had hit the jackpot by getting engaged to him. "Well, I am jealous. Congratulations, truly," I said. Miss Harris, looking satisfied, said, "Okay, I'm going back to work," and returned to her desk. When it comes to this, it's almost refreshing. I sighed deeply. I need to focus on my work. just as I was trying to switch my mindset, I heard the other female employees talking behind me. She's really getting carried away, isn't she? Seriously, just because she's getting married, she's acting so giddy? What's up with that? Like she can actually be happy after getting married. She probably can't even do housework and might cheat on him. I agree. She's definitely the type who would get divorced quickly once her charms wear off. Totally agree. As one of them began to vent, the others joined in, spewing complaints. Out of pure curiosity, I asked the female employees, "Weren't you all friends with Miss Harris?" "What are you talking about? No way." They all laughed. "We would never be friends with a woman like that. It's just her thinking we're her friends." I see. It seems that Miss Harris had managed to make enemies of the female employees again. They didn't mind when she was bullying me, but as she increasingly tried to one-up me, she started doing the same thing to the other female employees. I sighed quietly. Aren't you the ones who boosted and fanned her flames? From then on, Miss Harris boasted about her fiancé almost daily. Apparently, he comes from a prestigious family, is highly educated, earns a high income, and his parents' home is located in an upscale residential area in Manhattan.
This has nothing to do with you, Miss Thompson, who always looks so shabby. It seems like you could continue to live a simple life alone. The only people who would marry you are likely to be leftovers. Nobody high profile or high earning would ever consider someone like you. You may have to settle for someone uneducated and unemployed. But even such a man might refuse you, considering you're a dried-up old maid.
Miss Harris would say, laughing.
I'll invite you to my wedding, Miss Thompson. It will be your last shining moment.
I certainly did not want to attend that. I couldn't care less about her wedding dress, and I'm sure I'd be seated with those female employees. Even if the venue is glamorous and the food is delicious, I wouldn't want to be there. As I was thinking this, Miss Harris said,
"Oh, I just remembered. I'll show you a picture of his parents' house."
And she began manipulating her smartphone. I wasn't interested in her fiancé's parents' house at all.
"Oh, I found it. This is it,"
Miss Harris said, bringing her smartphone screen closer to me. I saw a house that looked familiar.
"Isn't it amazing? Such a gorgeous and wonderful house being his parents' home. They must be extremely wealthy. All this will eventually be mine. I'm on top of the world. I'm now part of the rich gang. If I feel like it, I'll invite you over, Miss Thompson."
Miss Harris said this, but my eyes couldn't leave the screen of her smartphone.
"Oh my, did that surprise you? Feel free to take a look at the pictures of the interior as well."
As she slid the phone across, more familiar scenes appeared. This is...
You can't see or enter such a luxurious house, can you? Are you envious?
I cut her off in a hurry and said, this is actually my parents' house."
"What? What are you talking about?"
"Well, I mean this house in the photo." When I said that, Miss Harris looked shocked.
"Huh? What are you saying? Just because you're envious, you shouldn't make such a lame claim."
No matter what she says, I'm convinced this is my parents' house. Besides, I'm an only child, so it's not like I have brothers who could marry her or anyone else. The only ones living in this house are my parents, who have entered their 60s, and our beloved dog. Miss Harris seems to think I was joking and laughed out loud.
"Oh, Miss Thompson, you're so high level, keeping a straight face while fooling around."
But I said seriously, "No, I'm not kidding. This is really true," she said, pointing at the photo.
"But look, his car is parked here too, right? And how could you take pictures inside a house that isn't yours?"
Despite her objections, the photos she was showing me were undoubtedly my parents' house. The placement of things, the floor plan, it was all exactly like the house I grew up in. Then it hit me. I remembered a sales guy who was often coming and going from my parents' house. I'd met him there and talked to him. He was desperately trying to get a contract, telling my parents all sorts of convenient things. I asked Miss Harris her fiancé's name. It was the same name as the salesman. I see. So that man, Aaron, was pretending my parents' house was his own to impress her. What a lame guy. Does he think he could get away with that? I noticed other signs that Aaron wasn't a very good person. He was always smiling, and even when my parents said,
"We think we'll pass on the contract this time,"
he would cheerfully respond,
"I see. Well, I'll come by again next time."
But the moment he left the house, I saw from my bedroom window that he had a really scary look on his face. Maybe he was just angry because he didn't get the contract, but it left me a really bad feeling. There's no need to tell Miss Harris about this, but that house is definitely my parents' house. I won't back down on that. Miss Harris was raising her voice.
"What? That house is Miss Thompson's parents' house. That's impossible."
No matter how much I explained, she wouldn't believe me. So I decided to take her to my parents' house after work that day. We arrived at my parents' house, and I took her through the gate. I opened the front door and said, "I'm home." Then my parents came out with a smile.
"Welcome home. When you said you were coming home all of a sudden, we wondered what was going on. You even brought a friend."
"It's not often we see you, but it's nice to see your face after a long time."
"We have to serve something since you brought a friend."
"We have some sweets we brought when we went on a trip to France with your aunt. We'll serve them with some tea." Looking at Miss Harris, my parents smiled happily. I mentioned the name of her fiancé and asked my parents about him.
"Oh, the salesman.
He was here just the other day." Hearing my parents respond like that, Miss Harris seemed to accept the truth. When we arrived in my room, she suddenly began to cry. "What happened? Are you sad because you were lied to about his family home?" Sure, being lied to might have been shocking, but it was not that much of a disaster, I thought. Then Miss Harris said, "I'm sorry," and began to talk about her engagement with Aaron. Apparently, Miss Harris met Aaron at a social gathering. At that time, Aaron told her that he held a position in a major corporation, and when they were alone, he informed her that his family was wealthy, which caused her to fall for his good looks and the status. After that, they went on a few dates and their relationship developed. However, despite Aaron's position in a major corporation, he turned out to be surprisingly stingy. At first, he paid for all of their dates, but gradually, he started making Miss Harris pay, claiming he had no cash on hand. When Miss Harris said something about it, Aaron suddenly proposed, saying,
"Actually, I want to save money because I'm going independent. Plus, we need to save for our wedding fund, right?"
Caught off guard by the proposal, Miss Harris got carried away and started to shell out cash as he directed. Aaron took advantage of this, borrowing more and more money from Miss Harris, and before she knew it, she had handed him a substantial sum. Still, she fell blindly for his sweet words like,
"It's for our happy married life together."
If you look at it objectively, you would think that if his family was really wealthy, he wouldn't need to borrow money from his girlfriend. But Miss Harris, who had fallen head over heels in love, seemed to trust him completely. But now it seems even Miss Harris had come to realize it was a lie. Miss Harris came to apologize to me in tears.
"Miss Thompson, I'm really sorry. I apologize for the terrible attitude I've been showing until now. I know I can't be forgiven, but please let me apologize."
She explained in tears that she was led by the other female employees to harass me. She didn't really like to gossip or show off, but she was instigated by the other female employees and pressured to join in, or else she would be left out like before. It was hard, but she said she managed to endure because she had Aaron. Again, she apologized and shed big tears. Seeing Mrs. Harris like that made me feel sorry for her. She was really struggling in her own way. We could leave those female employees, but the liar must be dealt with. In a way, my family and I are involved too. We need to teach him a lesson. Let's teach that guy a lesson. I decided to have Miss Harris call Aaron. When we arranged to meet at a cafe, he changed his complexion as soon as he saw my face. Aaron, looking uncomfortable, lowered his gaze. I told him I was going to report his misuse of the photo of his family home and his deception of my junior colleague to his workplace. He turned pale and started apologizing.
"Please, forgive me for that."
"So why did you lie and deceive Miss Harris?" Apparently, he had approached her because he thought she had money, since she wore nice clothes and branded bags. He began to brazen it up. and turned to Miss Harris and said something outrageous.
Mainly, it's your fault for coming after me without seeing through my lies. I showed you a nice dream, so you should consider it a gratitude fee.
I was stunned at his audacity. It reminded me of the hidden side I saw from the window at my family home. You proposed marriage. That's why Miss Harris trusted you. Then Aaron replied with a defiant laugh.
Well, I thought it was the best thing to say.
What do you mean? So you had no intention of marrying Miss Harris?
Well, yes. I'm not thinking about getting married right away.
Aaron casually made such a statement. Miss Harris couldn't take it anymore and started crying. Seeing Miss Harris crying, Aaron looked annoyed. What a terrible man he is. There's no need to show mercy to someone like him. I pulled out a voice recorder and said, I recorded what you just said. And you know you can demand compensation for breaking off an engagement without a reasonable cause. Aaron turned pale and frantically said,
Whoa, that's gonna be a problem.
Choose between reporting this incident to the company or repaying the money you borrowed from Miss Harris along with some damages, I said. Hearing this, Aaron replied,
I'll pay back the money,
and dropped his shoulders. That's how we came to an agreement that he would pay back Miss Harris. It seems that Aaron was cheating, and his mistress was spending money lavishly, more than his salary could cover. But he was so smitten with her that he was siphoning money from Miss Harris to keep her satisfied. After Aaron left the cafe, Miss Harris tightly grasped my hand and repeatedly expressed her gratitude. She apologized once again for everything that had happened and promised to change her ways. Since then, Miss Harris has become quite fond of me and no longer exhibits her previous attitude. Even when other female employees act unpleasantly, she no longer lets it bother her and concentrates on her work. Seeing her like this, the female employees still badmouth her, but I think they're just not worth dealing with. Later, when one of the female employees got engaged, a nasty war of words began among them. Petty jealousies and grudges started affecting their work, and a fed-up supervisor escalated the matter, resulting in each of them being transferred to different departments. Being on their own, these women weren't particularly harmful, and it seems they are now working quietly in their new departments. Our department has become peaceful and calm, and Miss Harris has been able to work more freely. Lately, Miss Harris and I have been having lunch together, sharing our hobbies. Thanks to her, I've developed an interest in fashion, and she has become a big fan of anime. I may not be friendly with everyone, but having someone like Miss Harris, whom I can trust, has made working at this company more enjoyable than ever. Money and status may be attractive, but they are only a part of life, not everything. I may be plain, but I believe that being able to live a peaceful and calm daily life is truly the greatest happiness.
I made myself lunch today. I want to be a better cook, so please have a taste, she said.
All right, let's go to a nearby park and eat, I replied.
Yes,
she replied happily.
Hey, your mom wants to come along on our honeymoon. Oh, really? I'll leave it up to you then, Madison. Excuse me? We finally managed to plan our honeymoon amid all the chaos, and now my mother-in-law wants to tag along, and my husband is just dumping the whole situation on me? So you're really okay with me handling this? Yeah, whether she comes along or not, do as you see fit. Well, if that's how he wants to play it, I have my own ideas too. Let's see. I'll make sure we have the best honeymoon ever. My name is Madison, and I'm 29 years old. Half a year ago, I married a man who works at the same company as me. He's 8 years my senior. His name is Zach. He's quite popular within our company. He's good-looking, tall, and slim. He's also proficient at his work and is highly trusted by his juniors and superiors. During his single days, he was popular among female colleagues, and I was one of them who admired him. Somehow, I managed to beat out the stiff competition, and we eventually got married. However, since we got married, I feel like I've been constantly let down by him. Madison, could you iron this? But I'm cleaning right now. Yeah, so once you're done, please do it before I leave the house. He's completely useless when it comes to cooking and laundry. Despite both of us working, all the household chores fall onto me. Apparently, he used to rely on his mother for everything apart from work, and even his outfits, which I always thought were stylish, were all coordinated by his mom. Because of his carelessness and indecisive nature, there were problems when we were getting married. Around 3 years into our relationship, I grew tired of his reluctance to bring up marriage, so I casually broached the subject. "Hey Zach, have you thought about marriage?" Then he made a troubled expression and groaned, I guess it's about time. My mom also said, shouldn't you settle down and let her get married? Your mother said? I was genuinely surprised. Can't he do anything without his mother's advice? There were times when I seriously wondered if it would be better to break up with such a man. But seeing his gentle side and how he worked at the company, I just couldn't come to dislike him. My mother-in-law is not a bad person. To put it nicely, she's friendly. To put it badly, she lacks delicacy. She tends to impose her preferences and wishes onto others. I didn't hate my mother-in-law, but there were parts of her I struggled with. My husband doesn't defend me when his mother says something. He doesn't really listen. The lazy and indecisive Zach didn't cooperate much with the preparations for the wedding, leaving everything to me. I think it would be nice to decorate this place with these flowers. What do you think? Isn't it fine? I'm okay with anything. Madison, you decide. Hey, this is our wedding, right? Let's think about it together. Zach lazily muttered, really, anything's fine. It wasn't just the ceremony. Even planning our honeymoon was the same. It all started with Zach's statement, I don't like tours. It's our honeymoon. I want to go on a trip where we can freely go to places we want to visit. But it's both of our first times abroad, right? I think it would be more reassuring to go on a tour. On a tour, the places to visit are predetermined, and we have to stick to the schedule. There are tours that allow free activities, right? And if we consider things like an interpreter, anyway, I won't go on a honeymoon if it's a tour. Please come up with a plan that I can agree with. And with that, he left everything to me. Between the wedding ceremony arrangements and honeymoon plans, managing all of this alone in between work is simply impossible. Eventually, we decided to go on our honeymoon a few months later on our first wedding anniversary. The destination? The long-desired 10-day trip to Hawaii. As I researched various tourist spots, my anticipation for the trip slowly grew. This was the only time my husband enthusiastically voiced his request, saying things like, I want to go here, and I want to eat this. One day, with the honeymoon only 2 months away, a problem arose.
Madison, you're going to Hawaii for your honeymoon, right?
My mother-in-law suddenly called to ask, to which I responded, yes. We've been talking about wanting to go to Hawaii for a long time. Our dream is finally coming true.
What a coincidence. I've wanted to go to Hawaii since forever. I thought it would be a great opportunity, so I want to go with you. That's okay, right?
You mean you want to come too? Caught off guard by her unexpected proposition, I was taken aback. Ignoring my obvious reluctance, my mother-in-law continued over the phone.
I had traveled with Zach for quite a while. I thought it would be a great opportunity.
But this is our honeymoon.
I know, darling. I'm not thinking of staying in the same room as the newlyweds, so don't worry.
Well, that's true, but usually parents don't accompany their children on honeymoons.
It's okay. We're just going to tour the sites together. Or are you saying you'd be annoyed if I were there?
No, that's not what I meant.
Then it's decided. Let Zach know too.
She made a unilateral decision and the call ended. No matter how you look at it, having your mother-in-law accompany you on your honeymoon is unthinkable. Surely even Zach would object to this. If her son objects, my mother-in-law will surely give up. That night, I immediately discussed the matter with my husband. Hey, your mother called me today. Huh? From Mom? Looking surprised, my husband responded, what did Mom say? She said she wants to come to our honeymoon. Is that so? I'll leave it up to you, Madison. Excuse me? Wait a minute, what is he saying? Leave it up to me? This can't be a joke. Sensing danger, I confronted my husband. Don't say irresponsible things like leaving it up to me. I've never heard of a mother-in-law accompanying her son and daughter-in-law on their honeymoon. Well, Mom's always loved traveling. That's not the point. This is our honeymoon, our first trip as a married couple. Yeah, that's why I'm leaving it up to you, Madison. What do you mean, leave it up to me? She's your mother, isn't she? With a hint of anger in my voice, I retorted and my husband reluctantly opened his mouth. But Madison, you're the one arranging the trip, right? What? You're the one arranging our accommodation and all the expenses, right? I don't know much about it, so I thought it would be best to leave it to you. Wait a minute. Don't you have anything to say about your mother coming along on a trip? Nah, I don't really care either way. That's why I'm saying I'll leave it to you. His irresponsibility and indecisiveness irritated me. I could feel the blood rising to my head and I couldn't help but yell at him. Stop messing around. This trip to Hawaii is also our first anniversary trip. It's obviously strange to have a parent accompany us, don't you think? Then Madison, you should just tell my mother no. Why do I have to? You're the one who should tell her, Zach. Me? I don't want to make things awkward with my mom. What? Even though his mother is trying to tag along on our honeymoon, he kept insisting on leaving everything to me. He doesn't feel that this honeymoon trip has any special meaning. Yes, if he's so inclined, I have my own ideas too. I will make sure he regrets leaving everything to me. I took a deep breath and with a low voice I said to my husband, So you're really going to leave it all to me? Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Are you sure you won't complain about what I decide later on? Whether you let my mom come along or not, just handle it properly. Okay, I got it. Don't forget your words. Once I got back to my room, I immediately changed our travel reservations. Looking forward to it, I made the plan just as you said. I'll arrange the best honeymoon trip for you. And on the day of the trip, we called a taxi and got in together. On the way, we picked up my mother-in-law and headed straight for the airport. During the ride, my husband and mother-in-law were happily chatting about the trip, not knowing about all the trouble I've gone through. When we arrived at the airport, I handed my husband a bag before checking in. Here, this bag contains our plane tickets and passports. Then my husband looked dissatisfied, looked at me, and grumbled, I have to carry this? Yes, we're about to go on a trip, right? It's important, so don't lose it. Why don't you carry it, Madison? It's no use if I carry it. After all, I'm not going. Huh? Not going? What do you mean? I began explaining to my increasingly agitated husband. Going to Hawaii with 3 people would blow our budget. That's why I decided to have your mother go in my place. What are you kidding me? It's our honeymoon. Oh, is there a problem? You were the one who said to leave everything on me, weren't you? Yes, but you're telling me to go on a 10-day trip alone with my mother. Well, yes, after all, it was you who said, I don't care either way. You never said you wanted to go on a honeymoon with just the 2 of us. You didn't say you didn't want your mother to come. You said, I'll leave everything to Madison and I won't complain. Is there a problem? You're not going to tell me you wanted to go on a honeymoon with just me. I mean, you wouldn't say something so silly, would you? Provoking him in this way, my husband bit his lip and hung his head. My mother chimed in as if to soothe him. Since Madison says so, let's just go on the trip as parent and child. Mom! Oh, I want to go to Diamond Head, and after that, maybe I'll buy an Aloha shirt at the Ala Moana Center. Stop it, Mom. Ignoring my flustered husband, his mother happily spread out a guidebook. Looking at this, people in the airport laughed quietly. Ew, they're going to Hawaii with his mother, even though it's their honeymoon. Super funny. At the voices around us, my husband turned red up to his ears. I sent a full-faced smile to my husband and his mother and waved my hand saying, Come on, it's almost boarding time, hurry up. Madison, wait. Enjoy your trip to Hawaii, you two. Bye-bye. I could hear my husband's desperate cries, but I left the airport without looking back. The next day, as I arrived at work as usual, my superiors and colleagues widened their eyes. One of my friendly superiors asked hesitantly, Hey, weren't you supposed to be on vacation for your honeymoon today? Oh, if you're talking about the trip, my husband and mother-in-law are going together. They're probably enjoying themselves in Hawaii right now, aren't they? Wait, he went on a trip with his mother, leaving his wife behind? That's right. He didn't object to his mother coming along, and he just dumped everything on me and said to handle it, so I arranged a parent-child trip for them. At my explanation, my coworkers burst out laughing. Well, of course. At the office, he was seen as a capable businessman, and they had thought his private life was going well too, but here he was going on a honeymoon with his mother. Hey, I didn't know he was such a mama's boy. I couldn't stand going on a trip alone with my mother for 10 days. I definitely couldn't do it. I couldn't do it even for 2 days. Wow, what a good guy, thinking of his mother like that. The male colleagues jokingly labeled the husband as a mama's boy and laughed till their stomachs hurt. On the other hand, all the female employees were uniformly furious. I can't believe he prioritizes his mother over his wife. The moment he allowed his mother-in-law to accompany them on their honeymoon, it was unbelievable. Normally that's creepy, right? It's a total turnoff. Thus, the image of him as a tall, handsome, capable man was completely destroyed. Unbeknownst to my husband, he had lost his place at work. Then, daily persistent emails were sent from my husband in Hawaii. My mother is having a blast all by herself. Do you know how hard it is for me? My trip is miserable because of you, damn it. Given his first overseas trip and his self-centered mother-in-law, my husband seemed to be quite distressed. Complaining like a professional after making others do everything, that's just too much. From my point of view, he got what he deserved. Even funnier, my husband, desperate to maintain his perfect image, kept posting as if he was having a fulfilled journey on social media, unaware that I was still going to work as usual. That became an excellent source of laughter for the colleagues who knew the truth. Are you enjoying your honeymoon with your mother? Can't wait for the souvenirs from your journey with your beloved mom. Someone from the office commented on his social media, and even I laughed a lot. After that comment, my husband stopped posting altogether. After returning from the trip, my husband didn't show up to work and eventually submitted his voluntary resignation. I learned the fact from his boss at work. As for me, I had already moved back to my parents' house during their trip. Now I'm consulting with a lawyer to proceed with divorce. My husband seems unwilling to agree to divorce, and he complained a lot over the phone.
Are you insane to divorce over this? Withdraw it!
This? I retaliated without losing. Whose fault is this? Isn't it bad because you left everything to me?
So why does it lead to divorce? You're overreacting, saying whatever you like at the office.
I only spoke the truth, and didn't you realize from the reactions of the people at the office? It's weird for a mother to accompany on a honeymoon. Can't you see that? Can you stop shifting blame? I'm sick of being messed around by you. Why don't you let your beloved mommy decide everything from now on?
Well, wait a minute, Madison.
Without listening to the end, I blocked his contact. It seems to take some time for the divorce to finalize, but I no longer have any feelings for him. No matter how long it takes, I intend to get a divorce. If I ever get a chance to meet someone again, I hope to be with someone who can respect each other's opinions.
Stop mooching off your parents forever. Go away, you parasite, you money leech. The one hurling these insults at me is none other than my older sister. She has always been arrogant and has mocked me, her younger sister, endlessly. I can't stand it anymore, spouting off without knowing anything. I won't show any mercy just because we're family. I'll definitely show her. My name is Lisa. I'm 28 years old. I live in a high-rise condo with my parents. This all started about half a year ago. The reason was that my father was in debt. My dad, a company worker, got hooked on gambling, which he was introduced to by a colleague, and he quickly fell into a pit of debt. He must have borrowed from a nasty lender because his monthly payments started swelling fast, and even with my mom starting to work part-time, our living expenses became more and more strained. That's when it happened. I received a call from my mom, who was at her wit's end. Lisa, life's really tough right now. Could you help us out with some money? What? Dad's debt was that big? I didn't know either, but it looks like it's much bigger than we thought. My part-time job isn't nearly enough to cover it. I'm stunned. How can Dad do this to you, Mom? And isn't the house we lived in leaking? Is everyday life even manageable? Our home is just rented, so we can't even remodel it. We have no choice but to endure. Ugh, okay. Why don't you guys move in with me? So that's how I ended up inviting my parents to live in my condo. We've been living as a family of 3, while also helping with Dad's debt repayments. 2 months passed since my parents moved in. While eating lunch with my mom, she received a phone call. Oh, Mom? Long time no see. Hello? Is this Carrie? The person on the phone was my sister, Carrie. The first thing out of her mouth was unbelievable. Could you lend me some money? I went to the house and no one was there. Are you guys out? Money? I lent you $300 just the other day. Can't help it. I blew it all on slots again. Carrie, you're... As you can guess, my sister was also a gambler. True to the saying, like father, like daughter, Carrie also loves gambling. She's a housewife who frequents slot parlors while her husband works. Despite our struggling mother, Carrie continued. Hey, where are you? Did you move? Yes, we moved. That's why nobody was at the old house. What? You really moved? I didn't hear about this. Give me the address. About that. Being the softy that she is, my mom couldn't act cold towards even Carrie. Knowing this, I grabbed the phone from my mom. Hey, Carrie, enough is enough. How long will you keep bothering Mom like this? Huh? Lisa, why are you there? Mom's living with me now. The old house is rented and comes with rent. You're old enough. Stop asking parents for money. It's embarrassing. What's it to you? Then you lend me some money. Why should I? Absolutely not. Just stop bothering Mom about this anymore. I hung up abruptly. My mom looked awkward and said, I'm sorry, as she slumped her shoulders. I've never really gotten along with my 2-year older sister, Carrie. She's constantly getting into debt and bothering my mom without showing any gratitude. I've always despised my older sister. After her marriage, she stopped visiting our family home, and I thought it was a relief that our encounters decreased. But recently, it seems she's begun coming back to ask for money, especially our dad. He's been lenient with my sister, lending her money in secret from my mom despite being in debt himself. If my sister finds out where I live, it'll be the end of me. She has asked for my address a few times since, but I've ignored every single request. Then, a few days later, as the 3 of us were relaxing at home, the intercom rang. I'll get it, my dad said, unusually taking the initiative. A few minutes later, the door opened with a clatter and a shrill voice echoed. Wow, how many stories is this place? I turned towards the voice in surprise, and there stood my sister. What? Carrie, why are you... Oh, don't mind me. You should have told me sooner if you bought a penthouse. Mom and Dad still have money, right? But this place is... My mom started, but my sister didn't seem to be listening. Dad, you've always been into stocks, right? Maybe you hit it big time? That's not it, Carrie. This house is... As expected of my dad. I always thought you were no ordinary man, but you truly are amazing. At that, my father began to blush, with a doting smile on his face, and muttered, Well. What do you mean, well? This isn't your house, is it? Why are you acting like you own the place? It seems like it was my dad who gave my sister the address of this house. From my father's reaction, my sister seemed to have mistaken this house to be entirely owned by him, and began to throw sarcastic remarks at me. Hey, Lisa, how long do you plan on living off of our parents? What? I'm working. I'm not leeching off of Dad's house like this. But this house is... Poor you, right? You don't even have a husband to provide for you. My husband, on the other hand, works at a top-tier company after graduating from grad school. Isn't it funny how different we ended up as sisters? And what, you're at some no-name company with a low salary? Haha. I don't work at a company because... At that, my sister froze for a moment. Wait, are you seriously unemployed? Why would you think that? I'm just not attached to a company, but I do work. Unemployed at your age, that's just not acceptable. I don't want to be associated with that. What's your problem? Can't you listen? Oh wow, it's true what they say about people getting angry when you hit the bullseye. Haha. My sister continued to berate me and eventually received $200 as allowance from my father before leaving. That night, I complained to my father. Dad, do you realize that you're in debt? Despite knowing that, why are you giving Carrie money? I can't help it, can I? Carrie is a full-time housewife with no income. She's in a tough spot. That's because she's wasting it all on gambling. If you have the means to spoil Carrie, why don't you pay off your debt sooner? Both Mom and I are being troubled by this. Okay, I got it. Just don't get so angry. Seriously, it's exasperating how irresponsible my father can be. But they're still family. I can't just abandon them. Then, 2 weeks later, another storm hit out of nowhere. I'm pregnant, so I'll be moving in here with my husband. My sister, who had visited again, brought along her husband this time. And they were saying they would live in this house. Hold on a minute. Don't decide on your own. This house is mine. Huh, this house belongs to Dad. Besides, you being a bum is a bother to our parents. Why is it that you have to live here once you get pregnant, and even bring your husband? Well, I've already canceled my condo lease, so you, the unemployed, can just keep quiet. I told you I'm not a bum. How much will you keep having your own way until you're satisfied? Our argument was interrupted by Dad, who intervened, saying, Come on now. Calm down, Lisa. Carrie is pregnant, so we can't just kick her out, right? Even Dad? Enough is enough. Then my sister burst out laughing, looking at me desperately, trying to hold my ground. Haha, you act high and mighty, but you don't even have an income. Poor Dad. Parasitic bum should leave, you money sucker. At that moment, my emotions exploded with anger. That's enough. She's no longer family to me. If she wants it that way, I'll do as I please. With a smirk, my sister watched me. Fine, you want me to leave? Oh, aren't you obedient? Finally realized your worthlessness? I'll leave as you wish, but whatever happens, it's not my problem. Huh? What's that? The one who's going to have a hard time is you, not me. Upon hearing that, Mom intervened. Lisa, wait. I stopped Mom from butting in. Mom, I'm fine. Don't say anything. But... Really, okay? Thanks for your concern, but I'm fine. Lisa... Whether she didn't like our meaningful exchange, my sister yanked my arm. Get out of here already, you bum! I packed my belongings immediately and left the house the next day. A few days later, enjoying some alone time for the first time in a while, I received a call from my sister. Oh, how's your new life? How's living in that crappy apartment? Haha. You called just to say that? You're free, aren't you? Huh? Annoying. I cared enough to check in on you, but... Instead, are you helping Mom? You're doing some housework, right? Then my sister chuckled and blurted out, Like hell I am. Housework is Mom's job, right? I'm pregnant after all. I don't have to do such things. Really? You live together. You should cooperate more. How selfish can you be? Shut up. Unlike you, a jobless bum, I'm noble just by being pregnant. Get it? I'm a valuable person unlike you. You're annoying, I'm hanging up. With that, my sister hung up the phone. Worried, I called my mom. Mom, it's Lisa. Lisa. Although only a few days had passed, Mom's voice seemed tired. Mom, I just got a call from Carrie. She's pushing all the housework onto you? Yes, it was fine when you were helping me, Lisa, but Carrie doesn't do anything. I can't believe it. That's it. I'll have a word with her tomorrow. Just wait. Thank you, Lisa. I'm really sorry for everything. Regretting leaving my timid mom in the house, I worked desperately to finish my work. The next day, when I visited the condo, there was an unexpected problem. And my sister started complaining as soon as she saw my face. Lisa, it's terrible! My husband's been arrested for embezzlement! What? My brother-in-law did that? Wow, that's a major letdown. What are you acting so calm for? I'm in big trouble here. I don't know, it has nothing to do with me. There's something I wanted to tell you today, actually. Ignoring my complaint, my sister turned to our father, tears welling up in her eyes. Dad, help me. If I don't have my husband, I won't be able to live. Well, what do you expect me to do? You have money, don't you? Lend me some. No, really, I don't have any. That's impossible. In a state of frenzy, my sister began to search through my father's room, eventually finding his bank book. As soon as she excitedly opened it, her face froze at the sight of the balance. What? What is this? Why? Why is there only $1.75 left in the balance? To my sister's hysterical shouting, I explained. It's gambling, exactly like you. What? You're kidding, right? By the way, Dad's in debt too. What? Wait a minute. He is living in a luxury condo, right? There's no way he's broke. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. When we opened the door, several men in suits we didn't recognize were standing there. We have a warrant to seize property, so we'll be proceeding with the operation. With that, the men began to collect my sister's belongings one by one. Wait a minute, that's a designer bag I won at a casino. Oh, that's my beauty device. Why? My husband's embezzlement is recent. Please stop. To my bewildered sister, I delivered the facts. This isn't a seizure for your husband. It's because our dad ignored all the debt collection efforts. It seems like he's been ignoring all the letters from the court without telling me or Mom. What? What does that mean? Then what about this house? That's why I said this is a house I rented. It wasn't bought and it's not in the name of Dad or Mom. No, you're lying. Rent? Why didn't you tell me sooner? I tried to tell you many times. So did Mom. It's you who ignored everything and didn't want to know. How can you afford to rent a luxury condo like this? That doesn't make sense. I'm doing stock trading at home. Stocks? Just like Dad did, I tried to mimic him, and it turned out I was better at it. The one who hit it big in the stock market wasn't Dad, it was me. What? Then what about this house? What will happen to me? I don't feel like paying the rent anymore either, so everyone will probably be evicted eventually. I can just rent another place, but it will be tougher for you, being jobless with a child. Well, do your best. I no longer consider you family and have no intention of helping. Saying this, my sister collapsed on the spot, crying loudly. Seeing my selfish sister like this, I finally lost my patience. What are you crying for? After all the trouble you've caused, now you cry and ask for help when things get tough? You're too selfish. Listen, Mom is going to live with me. I won't let you get involved with her anymore. Just stay there with our good-for-nothing father and wait until your husband comes back. No, you're my sister, right? Don't abandon me, please. You should experience a bit of hell, you disaster. It goes without saying what happened to my sister and father after that. In the end, my brother-in-law was unable to repay the money he had embezzled and is now in jail. The worst part is, it seems my sister was unknowingly using the money her husband had embezzled. It was clear she was spending more money than his salary could cover, so the conclusion was that my sister who ignored this was also at fault. As for my father, without me and my mom who had been helping him with his debt repayment, he must have finally realized how grateful he should have been. He now works a day job and takes on night work as a traffic controller, pushing his old body to work double shifts. As for me, I moved into a new place with my mom and we're living peacefully. I've always lived light, renting, so if I lose my home, I just need to rent a new one. At first, Mom was worried about Dad and my sister, but now she's regaining her old spirit. Hey, Lisa! I heard there's a new cafe that opened up near the station. Mom, you really love cafes, don't you? That place is famous for its waffles. Come on, let's go together. Sure, after work then. Yay! I'll do some cleaning and wait. Finally attained this utterly ordinary day-to-day life. I intend to savor this happiness and live each day with gratitude.
I'm also getting married on September 10th, starting 1 p.m. Oh wait, that's the same day as your wedding, sis. My younger sister teased, her eyes narrowed in a mocking grin. Same day, even the same time. It couldn't possibly be a coincidence. Aren't you just having a small family-only ceremony, sis? You don't even have 100 people coming? Aw, that's so pitiful. We're inviting everyone, not just family, but friends and coworkers too, for a grand celebration. Do whatever you want. I swallowed the retort and instead chose different words. My name is Sarah. I'm 30 years old, a full-time worker. I met Thomas, who is 3 years older, through a friend's introduction, and we registered our marriage just recently, after 2 years of dating. Thomas works in the food industry and is a sincere and kind-hearted man. We plan to have our wedding ceremony next month, with most of the preparations already done. While many of our friends chose to hold lavish ceremonies, we decided on a small, family-only affair. The reason? I didn't want my parents and sister mingling with my friends and colleagues. Ever since we were friends, my parents had always favored my sister Melanie over me. Melanie, 3 years younger and undeniably prettier even from my objective perspective, was the apple of their eyes. With her large eyes, long eyelashes, small face, and fair skin, she was scouted by several talent agencies and even worked as a teen model during her school days. My parents doted on Melanie, often comparing her to me. Sarah, you have such a plain face. It's depressing looking at you. Sarah, you lack any charm. Melanie is as cute as an angel, unlike you. Was a common refrain. They would buy new clothes and toys for Melanie, providing her for every whim, but I was not allowed to learn any hobbies. Melanie was indulged with piano, ballet, swimming lessons, and more, but she was fickle and quickly lost interest. Despite this, our parents never admonished her. Even when Melanie failed tests due to her carefree lifestyle, they cheered her on, while scolding me harshly if I scored just average. I would often think to myself, I wish you hadn't given birth to me either. Every time they said I should have never been born. I was not allowed to retort as my parents badmouthed me and pampered Melanie. Naturally, Melanie grew up spoiled and acting like a queen. She remained beautiful, but her character was horrible. We don't look alike at all, sis. Your plain face is so pathetic. She'd mock, constantly belittling me. I didn't want to introduce my parents and sister to Thomas or his family, but my in-laws were aware of the complex relationship and didn't insist. However, my parents demanded a meeting, and reluctantly we arranged for a joint family dinner. The day arrived amid my anxiety. My family, my parents and Melanie, and Thomas's parents attended the dinner. Worried about any blunder my family might commit, I could barely taste the delicious food. Despite the gathering being for my wedding, my parents showed no interest in Thomas. Even when we talked about how we met or our future life, they dismissed it with a mere, In contrast, they praised Melanie excessively when introducing her. Even when my in-laws tried to shift the conversation to me, my parents would deflect, saying, "Forget about her, let's talk about Melanie." Melanie chimed in, saying, "Mom, Dad, you two praising me too much." Well, there's nothing interesting to talk about sis anyway. As expected, but still distressing to see, my bizarre family dynamic played out in front of Thomas and my in-laws, causing their faces to stiffen. My family, having had their fill of food and talk of Melanie, left without even a congratulatory word for our wedding. I was stunned that they hadn't even congratulated me on my wedding when Thomas gently put his arm around me. I heard some of it, but I never thought they would be this terrible. You've had it tough, Sarah. My in-laws then expressed their heartfelt gratitude. Sarah, we know you've been through a lot. We're so happy that you're a part of our family now. Please feel free to lean on us like real parents from now on. Their words warmed my heart. I thanked them and finally voiced something that had been on my mind for a while. I'm thinking about having a small, intimate wedding because my parents and sister are, well, as you've seen, unpredictable. I'm a bit concerned about what might happen if we invite acquaintances or friends. Would it be okay if we keep it just to close family? I asked my in-laws. Thomas had already agreed to this. My in-laws responded affirmatively. Of course. I let out a sigh of relief. So it was decided that we would have a small family-only wedding. However, as our wedding approached, I was hit with a shocking report. Unexpectedly, I received a call from my parents. Melanie is getting married. Her fiancé is at her house right now. You must come over. On arrival, I saw my parents, Melanie, and her fiancé. The man's face was familiar. Nice to see you, Sarah. I was surprised to find out you are Melanie's sister, he said. I'm surprised too, I replied. His name was Ethan Matthews. He worked for one of my company's business partners. When Melanie mentioned your name, I assumed you must be a different Sarah. I never thought you two could be sisters. You don't look alike at all, he sneered. This man had always looked down on me at work. Apparently, it was because I didn't have a college degree. My parents told me, you should work, not go to college. Unable to attend college, I joined the current company right after high school. Matthews, it seems, graduated from a prestigious university, and he tends to judge people based on their education. The idea of becoming family with such a man was daunting. I wanted to leave the room as quickly as possible. Congratulations on your wedding. I'll be taking my leave now, I said. But then Melanie stunned me with an unexpected statement. We've decided to have our wedding on the same day, at the same venue as you guys, she blurted out. Ethan joined in. Our wedding is going to be grand compared to yours, he said, smirking. I was too shocked to respond to their outrageous proposal. Our wedding venue was a large place capable of hosting several weddings on the same day. Despite my initial preference for a smaller venue due to the intimate guest list, Thomas and my in-laws insisted on this grand venue, since it was our big day. Indeed, if Melanie and Ethan were planning a grand ceremony with lots of guests, this would be the ideal venue. However, deliberately scheduling their wedding at the same time and day could only be seen as an act of spite. Melanie and Ethan laughed derisively. Look at her! She's frozen in shock! Are you okay? They mocked. I tried to remain calm and retorted. What do you mean by that? What about our parents and relatives? Which wedding are they supposed to attend? Melanie was unfazed. Don't worry. Dad, Mom, and all our relatives are attending mine and Ethan's wedding, she replied, looking triumphant. Our parents even started calling our relatives right then and there, requesting them to attend Melanie's ceremony. The relatives, whom I had met several times, always favored Melanie. They either didn't want to stir up trouble, or perhaps they thought I was a liar. Even when I explained that it was Melanie who had announced her wedding date after ours, they didn't believe me and labeled me as immature for trying to have the ceremony on the same day as my sisters. Looking at my smiling parents, Melanie, and Ethan, I let out a sigh and left the house, saying, ugh, okay, then fine. No one even came to see me out. I could hear their vulgar laughter echoing as I closed the door. Back home, I apologized to Thomas and my in-laws about not being able to invite anyone from my side to our intimate wedding, despite being the one to suggest it in the first place. However, they didn't mind and even suggested that with fewer guests, we could have a more lavish ceremony. I was truly grateful. Then came the wedding day. As the relatives were walking through the lobby to attend Melanie's reception, I crossed paths with them. Sarah is such a nasty woman. Compared to Melanie, Sarah is so plain, they whispered and passed by. I brushed off their comments and determined to make the day the best wedding ever. Our ceremony was going great. Thomas's talented relatives entertained us with various performances, creating a truly happy atmosphere. Suddenly, amidst the celebration, we heard a voice shouting, "What is this?" Melanie, Ethan, my parents, and Ethan's parents all stormed into our wedding. Melanie, what's going on? I asked her out of the blue. She burst out, "Everyone from Ethan's office is absent today. You must have done something." In reality, the reception hall for Melanie and Ethan's wedding was devoid of attendees from Ethan's workplace, leaving many empty seats. This caused my parents to angrily confront Ethan's parents with, "What a disgrace this is." Ethan's parents were furious, having been berated for something they knew nothing about, which set a bad mood. Melanie, in a panic, falsely told Ethan's parents that she and I had arranged our weddings to overlap on purpose, as we were not on good terms. Thus, she stormed into my wedding ceremony, suspecting I must have done something. My wedding was a disaster, and yet Sarah's wedding is full of happiness. It's infuriating, Melanie spat out. Melanie, calm down. I tried to reason with her. However, Melanie attempted to ruin the ceremony by shouting, "Attention, everyone! My sister Sarah is the worst person in the world. She has bullied me since I was a child." I tried to stop her. "Melanie, stop this!" But her tirade didn't halt. "I'm much more beautiful in a wedding dress than she is. She's always been envious of my beauty, and she's just a gloomy, depressing woman." Melanie continued with her baseless accusations. Ethan joined in, agreeing with her. "Exactly. Sarah is a high school graduate and totally useless." He went on. "That's why you shouldn't hire high school graduates. I, on the other hand, graduated from a top-notch university and I'm super talented. I'm even buddies with the CEO, so promotion is a certainty." He still went on telling how he is great. However, when Ethan noticed my father-in-law seated at the groom's family table, his face turned pale. He had been boasting about himself and disparaging me, but now he was shaking in fear. "Why is the CEO here?" he mumbled in shock. "Matthews, I'm disappointed in you," my father-in-law said with anger in his voice. Why is the CEO here?" Ethan asked in a panic, to which my father-in-law replied, "I am the father of the groom, Sarah's father-in-law." Ethan stood there, mouth agape in surprise. Indeed, my father-in-law was the CEO of Ethan's company. "The reception venue for your wedding was next to ours, and before our ceremony started, I ran into your guests. I heard everything, how you intentionally overlapped our son's wedding, date, and time to it." The CEO voiced his anger. Ethan's invited guests had been terrified by the CEO's fury upon learning the truth, so they had fled. "No, it's not what you think, sir. I had no idea. It was all Melanie's doing." Ethan desperately tried to explain. Melanie, however, looked at him in disbelief. "There's no way I would ruin Sarah's wedding. She's an important client's employee. What I said earlier was just a joke. I didn't mean it." Ethan continued with his flimsy defense, only to be cut off by my father-in-law's command. "Stop lying. I spoke with your colleague earlier. I heard about the derogatory remarks you've been making about Sarah." He informed Ethan, who searched for an excuse, but seeming to realize he was caught, hung his head. "Sarah is an exceptional woman. She couldn't go to college due to her family's circumstances, but started working right after high school and has been striving every day since. She's been living a straight and honest life, despite her tough home situation. She would never judge or belittle someone based on their education, like you do. She's a very kind and wise woman." My father-in-law praised me, making me tear up. Sir, I deeply apologize for..." Ethan started to say, only for my father-in-law to cut him off. "You're apologizing to the wrong person. Apologize to Sarah, and don't you dare interfere with my son and his wife again. Understood?" Yes, sir." Ethan was shaking like a leaf. Turning to me, he tearfully apologized. I'm really sorry." "As I've had enough, please, just leave," I said. Melanie erupted. "What is this turn of events? Why is this happening?" Ethan yelled at Melanie. "Shut up! I regret ever marrying you." "What did you just say?" Melanie turned red with anger. The two were squabbling and having a huge fight, when shortly the venue staff came over and ushered Ethan and Melanie out. Their parents and in-laws, who had been watching in disbelief, also quickly left the venue. We, who were left behind, blew away the stunned atmosphere and resumed the joyous reception, which turned out to be quite a blast. I thanked my father-in-law, saying, "Father, I was truly happy about what you said earlier. Thank you." My father-in-law smiled warmly and said, "I apologize for my subordinate's behavior, and again, thank you, Sarah, for marrying my son. Please, let me know if you're ever in trouble. Later, Ethan was apparently nervous about being disciplined for this incident, but since it wasn't a work-related incident, there were no demotions. However, Ethan, who had been acting submissive in front of my father-in-law because he wanted to advance his career, ruined everything when his true nature was exposed. He was no longer able to speak to my father-in-law about anything other than work, and he was demoted to being just another employee. Ethan, who had been pressuring his colleagues by bragging about being the boss's favorite, was isolated due to his true nature, and even his coworkers and subordinates avoided eye contact with him. At the end of the day, Ethan was probably just another employee for my father-in-law, considering that he didn't even know who his son was going to marry. The entire company learned about Ethan's misdeeds, and Ethan's comfort in the office diminished. He even started blaming Melanie for everything and became violent towards her. Ethan was sued by Melanie for domestic violence, and Melanie was sued by Ethan's parents for ruining the wedding. It was a messy divorce drama. Melanie, who was crying about Ethan being violent, and her parents sued Ethan. Ethan and his parents, on the other hand, claimed that Melanie and her parents had interfered with Ethan's work and ruined the wedding. Both parties are reportedly hiring lawyers and preparing to sue, but they are struggling because they each only want to hear what they want to hear and are ignoring any inconvenient truths. As the mudslinging continued, Melanie ran out of money due to wedding expenses and lawyer fees, and her life became difficult. After the divorce was finalized, she had to move back in with her parents, who had treated her like a princess until then, but now treated her terribly, calling her the shame of their family. Although I didn't want to know, Melanie frequently called or emailed me to explain how tough her situation was. Even if I completely ignored her, I was still accumulating hundreds of missed calls and unread emails. My sister's abusive calls and her begging emails for money were all blocked without response. And then I started getting calls and emails from my parents. They were all begging for money, and they weren't worth reading. Whether they had spent too much money trying to show off at my sister's wedding, or they thought I would agree with them if they asked nicely, I don't know. But the volume was increasing, and it was becoming a nuisance, so I blocked them as well. I was prepared for them to come to my house, but they didn't even have the money for transportation to come here. Ethan's parents, who should be practically strangers to me, for some reason were begging me to mediate with my father-in-law. Recently, they even tried to follow me home, so I reported them without hesitation. They ran away every time the police came, but they have been increasing their stakeouts recently. Thanks to the increased number of reports, the police have strengthened their patrols, so things have been peaceful for now. I am building a warm home with my kind mother-in-law and father-in-law, thinking that they are my real parents, not my biological ones. I feel the calmness of a real family, which I had only heard of in rumors. There's no such thing as daughter-in-law bullying here, and I'm feeling the reality that family can be such a warm thing.
I thought you were a good daughter-in-law all this time. I don't want to see your face anymore. Get out of this house. Yes, just like a parasite, get out of here. Harsh words were thrown at me by my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, even though I had been taking care of my mother-in-law after my husband's death. I could not bear any longer the insults my sister-in-law was throwing, even at my husband, who cared about his mother till his last moments. All right, I'll leave as you wish. They rejoiced, but a few months later, my mother-in-law came crying to me. Their fate turned out to be more terrible than I expected. My name is Stella. I am 32 years old and work as a buyer for luxury brands. I met my husband, Bill, through a mutual friend. Bill, with his kind and gentle character, was my ideal husband, and I was so happy when he proposed. Bill was the oldest son, and his parents were independent, so we managed to maintain a good distance, and I never had issues with my in-laws, even after marriage. The balance between my responsible father-in-law and my laid-back mother-in-law seemed just right from my point of view. From Bill's perspective, his mother was too casual about money, which seemed to concern him for her future when she would be left alone. However, as long as his father was in good health, it didn't seem to be a major concern. Plus, Bill had a sister, Claire, 2 years older than him. She was divorced and living alone, but I thought she would certainly care for our in-laws since she was single. But Bill didn't seem to trust Claire much. "I'm a bit worried about leaving money matters to Claire," he said. "Why so?" "Well, Claire has had her share of issues in the past." In retrospect, Bill's concerns were justified, but at the time I didn't pay much attention to Claire's past. We continued our peaceful married life until a few years later, when my father-in-law's chronic illness worsened, and he passed away. My mother-in-law, who had relied heavily on him, was extremely distressed. "Cheer up, mother-in-law," I said. "But how am I supposed to live on my own when he was the one who always took care of everything around the house?" Just like Bill said, I too was worried about mother-in-law managing on her own. If I felt that way, I could only imagine Bill's worries. One night, Bill came to talk to me. "Stella, could we live together with my mom?" The proposal was sudden, but I was expecting it to some point. However, what concerned me was Claire. But wouldn't it be better if Claire moved in with her? "I want to take care of my mom in place of Dad from now on. Mom's particularly clueless about money, so I plan to manage her bank account too." "So you can't delegate that to Claire?" "That's not an option." Unusually, Bill was firm. "It's the money that Dad left for her. I'll manage it properly so Mom doesn't have to struggle." He seemed guilty for asking me to live together, but when it came to managing the inheritance and bank account left by his father, Bill was unwavering. "All right, it sounds fun to live together with mother-in-law. Besides, I worry about leaving her alone, seeing how she is." "Thank you, Stella." So we started living together in my mother-in-law's house. My mother-in-law had really left everything to her husband, from managing the bank account, paying utility bills, to credit card payments. She knew nothing. Bill managed everything separately from our account and started giving her a monthly allowance for living expenses. It was part of Bill's duties to caution his mother whenever she was about to fall for a suspicious door-to-door sales pitch or was being pressured to buy expensive cosmetics by acquaintances. Without such interventions, his carefree mother would readily pay money at the encouragement of others. She shared the household chores with me, understanding the fact that I was a working woman. Our life together was progressing smoothly. However, our tranquil life came to an abrupt end when Bill collapsed at his workplace. He had been overworking during a particularly busy period at his job and had the same chronic illness that his father did. As a result, he was hospitalized. His mother and I visited the hospital daily, but there was no sign of improvement in Bill's condition. "Stella, I have a favor to ask of you, for after I'm gone." "Don't talk like that. You'll get discharged for sure, and we'll all live together again." "I was prepared for this, knowing that I had the same disease as my father. I want you to listen to my request. It's about my mother." With tears streaming down my face, I listened to my husband's final request. Bill passed away a few weeks later. By keeping busy with notifying those who knew him and arranging for his funeral, I was able to distract myself from the grief of losing my husband. It wasn't until everything had settled down that I remembered what Bill had asked me to do. There was no time for mourning. Now it was my turn to take care of his mother in Bill's place. "Mother-in-law, I'm sorry for the chaos till now. From now on, I'll handle the money management in place of Bill. I'll provide you with your living expenses just like before." "Stella, even without Bill, are you going to stay with me?" "Of course. Bill had asked me to take good care of you, so please let me continue to stay with you." "Bill said that, huh?" Mother-in-law said with tears in her eyes. I feel bad for burdening you with the finances when you're all so busy. No, keeping busy actually helps me cope. However, it seems that Claire, my sister-in-law, was not amused by the fact that I was continuing to live there. When she found out that I was managing the finances, she barged into our home. Why is Stella, who's essentially a stranger now that Bill's gone, still living here? And isn't it strange that she's managing the finances? Before he passed away, Bill asked me to take care of mother-in-law and the finances. Huh, you're just saying that because it suits you, aren't you? No, it was Bill's wish. What? Just because you mentioned Bill's name? Despite her dissatisfaction, Claire backed down for the time being, only to return to our house in a fluster the following week. Stella, I saw it. You're having an affair. An affair? I saw you entering a men's designer shop and dining at a high-end restaurant with a man. Stella, you're spending our money on your lover, aren't you? That's not true. I'm not doing anything like that. No more excuses. How heartless can you be, moving on to the next man so soon after Bill's passing? You agree with me, don't you, Mom? Mother-in-law, completely believing Claire's words, started to view me with suspicion. Stella, so that's what it was? No, that's not it. I'm here because of Bill's wishes. As I tried to tell the truth, Claire interrupted me. Don't use Bill as an excuse while having an affair. You're the worst. Silenced, I was stared down coldly by my mother-in-law and Claire. My mother-in-law said harshly, I really misjudged you. I thought you were a good daughter-in-law until now. I don't want to see your face anymore. Get out of this house. Claire exclaimed triumphantly. That's right. Get out of here, you parasite. If I give up here, I would be wasting Bill's wishes. As I patiently endured their words, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law seemed to take pleasure in their onslaught. Why on earth did Bill even choose someone like you, Stella? He's always been a bit too trusting, hasn't he? Well, we can't really say, can we? For all we know, Bill might have just been saying he's managing Mom's money, while really using it for his own needs. Despite their cruel words against Bill, who cared for his mother-in-law until his dying breath, I'd had enough. I might be able to bear insults against me, but I can't stand you speaking ill of my late husband. Bill, I'm so sorry I couldn't keep my promise. I apologized to Bill in my heart, then turned to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Fine, I'll leave as you wish. As I said this, their faces lit up with joy. Finally realize you're the outsider, huh? And don't forget to leave the checkbook behind. Of course. But 3 months after cutting ties with them, my mother-in-law called me. Stella, I got a notice that my card payment didn't go through. What does that mean? It seems that her incompetence in handling money hasn't changed even after I left. My mother-in-law, however, ignores this and continues to berate me. We've never had this problem before. Ever since you left, the money has suddenly disappeared. You stole it, didn't you? What? This isn't something we can solve over the phone. Come over here now. She said, abruptly hung up the phone. Despite my reluctance, I had no choice but to head to her place. At the house, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were waiting for me. I walked past my raging mother-in-law, logged into the online banking, and showed her the account balance. Here is the statement. As you can see, the balance was never in the negative while I was here. Can you guess why? What? Isn't that because you saved money? You're not exactly known for being good with money, are you? The balance never went negative because I was depositing $1,500 each month for living expenses. Living expenses? You were depositing money for that? Ever since the time Bill was alive, we've always done it that way. We discussed that if we paid a little more than our share of the rent for living together, it would prevent my mother-in-law's savings from decreasing. Bill was? Even after Bill passed away, I carried on his sentiments and continued to pay the same amount from my salary. Of course, after being kicked out of the house, I stopped paying. Next, I showed her the statement after I left. And this is the statement after I left. Over $1,500 is gone. Seems like someone has been living quite luxuriously. I haven't changed my lifestyle at all. Then perhaps Claire has been using it? I looked at my sister-in-law and checked the details on the statement. According to these transaction records, the money was spent at high-end boutiques and fancy restaurants. It certainly doesn't look like expenses you would make. Claire, do you know anything about this? I have no idea. Really? Because I don't think there's anyone else who could use it. There's someone else, you. What? You might have secretly made a family card or something. After all, the places where money has been used are the same high-end shop and restaurant where I saw you. Even after leaving the house, you're still coveting Mom's money. You're so greedy. Enough of this. The reason I was at that shop was for work. The meal at the restaurant was a business meeting combined with a discussion with the owner of the shop. Work? You could say anything about that. If you're going to say that much, okay. While checking the statement, I called the owner of the shop. Yes, it was last Friday. The product's name is... As I spoke firmly, Claire stared at me in astonishment. Yes, please attach it to an email. That would be helpful. Oh, I see. Thank you for the information. After hanging up the phone and checking the email, I showed my mother-in-law and sister-in-law the video attached to the email I received. The picture showed my sister-in-law Claire purchasing designer goods. What? What is this? Upon seeing the image, Claire's face quickly paled and she screamed out. I phoned the store owner and had him send me a snapshot of the person buying the goods from the security camera footage on the day of the transaction. There's no doubt it's you, Claire. Do you have anything else to say? Claire stayed silent, unable to defend herself. Ah, and by the way, I was informed by the owner that recently, right after the products were sold, identical items have been popping up at nearby pawn shops. This also matches the date when you made the purchases with your card, doesn't it? Well, that's... Claire's flustered demeanor spoke volumes about the truth of the situation. My mother-in-law asked inquisitively, why would anyone buy something only to immediately sell it? Such a hassle. In lieu of the silent Claire, I answered, she needed cash, didn't she? If she directly withdrew the money, it would become apparent that it was her doing so. She tried to frame me by specifically choosing a store that I frequently visit, right? Claire kept silent, having no room for rebuttal. Yet my mother-in-law still had some doubts. But why did she need so much money? It was to repay debt. I supplemented Claire's whispered words. It seems she hid this from you, but the reason Claire got divorced was because of her debt, wasn't it? Even before their marriage, my husband Bill was often distressed about Claire constantly borrowing money from him. He used to lament her about her unchanging spendthrift habits even after marriage. Debt, you say? At that point, my mother-in-law seemed to realize something. My late husband's inheritance! The passbook to the account holding the inheritance was entrusted to Claire, wasn't it? Don't tell me you... Upon being asked by my mother-in-law, I also checked the balance of the account holding my father-in-law's inheritance. The balance is 0. Zero? All of it was withdrawn a few days after I left. No way! As my mother-in-law began to crumble, Claire screamed out. I had no choice. The due date for my debt repayment was closing in. If it's me, his daughter, using it, my father would definitely forgive me. That money was left for me by my husband. Claire, you did receive your portion of the inheritance, didn't you? And yet you spent even your mother's money. You're the real parasite. I'm cutting ties with you. Wait, we promised that I live here in Stella's stead, remember? If I live with a daughter like you who can't control her spending, I'll end up broke too. First of all, you need to pay back all the money you took from me." Saying so, my mother-in-law practically threw Claire out. However, whether this was the right choice, we do not know. After she was evicted, it became difficult to get in touch with Claire, and she never recovered any of the spent inheritance from her husband. My mother-in-law, who could have spent her later years comfortably, seems to be leading a frugal life all alone now. Claire did manage to repay her debts, but seemed unable to shake off her spending habits and soon found herself in new debts. She seems to be running from debt collectors, moving from place to place. Since leaving my husband's family home to live alone, I have finally been able to come to terms with Bill's death. The outcome was completely different from Bill's intention, but I do not regret it. In his last will, Bill told me, "What I want prioritized most is Stella's happiness." By separating from my in-laws who disrespected Bill's feelings, I was able to protect the memories of my husband. I'm sure Bill would forgive my decision. From now on, I plan to live slowly, indulging in the happy memories with Bill.
It's been a decade since we tied the knot. Every year, we've made a point of visiting my in-laws' place during the Christmas holidays. As it does every year, that time is fast approaching again. The truth is, every year's Christmas is a severe strain for me. Yes, that's right. I've been having major issues with my mother-in-law, and just the thought of it weighs me down. As December draws near, I feel my spirits sink lower and lower. Every year, I rack my brains, wondering if there isn't some way out of this. My name is Lisa. I fell in love with my husband at work, and we've been married for 10 years now. I knew my mother-in-law was a bit of a busybody when we went to announce our engagement, but I never thought things would come to this. I suppose I should have been more level-headed, but at the time, I was so smitten with Paul that I didn't see the signs. I remember it as if it were yesterday. I splurged on famous chocolate as a gift, but my mother-in-law's first words were, "You shouldn't have bothered. I hate chocolate. You were so rude to give me what I don't like." Caught off guard by her words, all I could say was, "I'm sorry." One can tell a lot about you from a simple gift. I wonder if you can get along well with Paul, she said. After 3 years of marriage, I finally got pregnant and I gave birth. My mother-in-law was making a fuss about how useless I was as a wife for giving birth to a girl. Her words hit me hard as I was dealing with my first childbirth. And since then, problems with my mother-in-law only got worse. "Lisa, why didn't you give birth to a boy who will be the heir? We don't need a girl. Please give birth to a boy. If you can't do that, you're disqualified as a wife." Paul should have married a younger wife. A wife older than her husband is the worst. My mother-in-law would say things like that without considering my feelings. Of course, I talked to Paul about it, but he had no intention of defending me. "Don't take everything she says so seriously," he would say, which was just horrible. Each time, I would confide in Sarah, my sister-in-law. I've been getting along well with her since the first time I was dating Paul, and since I'm an only child, I saw her like a real sister. But my mother-in-law would call me every day asking if I had a child yet. I couldn't stand being treated as if my daughter was unwanted. And then my mother-in-law started asking me to send her money behind Paul's back because she was having a hard time. I couldn't ignore the fact that my mother-in-law was in trouble. And then, 2 years after the birth of my daughter, I was blessed with a second child. I thought that if it was a boy this time, I wouldn't be criticized, and I was on tender hooks until I found out the sex of the baby. But when I went for a checkup, the doctor told me it was a girl, and I was at a loss for words. And so began the phone onslaught from my mother-in-law again. "Lisa, don't you know the sex of the baby yet?" "I'm sorry, I don't know yet." "Modern hospitals should be able to tell. There's no way they can't." "I'll let you know as soon as I find out." "I don't want another girl. Sorry." I was so upset and complained to my sister-in-law. And so I gave birth without revealing the sex of the baby. When they told me, "Congratulations, it's a girl," I could only imagine my mother-in-law's demonic face, and all I could do was laugh. And my mother-in-law never once showed up at the hospital, but it was all the better for me. My mother lives 20 minutes away by car, and I had left my older child with her for the birth. My mother brought my daughter to the hospital, and we were happy to have a new family member without anyone complaining. I went back to my parents' house with my mother and my older child for a month. The month I spent relaxing with my mother at home was a time of nostalgia and relief. And when my younger child's 1-month checkup was over, I returned home, but I hadn't heard a thing from my mother-in-law. And then several months passed, and the usual Christmas holidays were upon us. I was spending every day with a heavy heart, but I couldn't avoid it, and I thought she might be in a better mood once she saw her grandchildren. So I decided to bring a famous cake this time. And on the day, Paul drove us to our usual steak restaurant. As I wondered what would be said, my heart was pounding. When we entered the reserved private room, my in-laws were already there. Despite her grumpy demeanor, the arrival of my brother-in-law and his wife soon had the meal off to a lively start. Of course, the conversation turned to my younger child, and everyone was excited, but I noticed that my mother-in-law's face was tense. I sensed something was wrong and tried to change the subject when, "You can't even give birth to a boy? You're a useless wife! You're not part of this family!" My mother-in-law suddenly started saying terrible things. And then she deliberately knocked over the tea that was in front of her. "Oh, I'm sorry. If your daughter gets a burn on her face, no one will know she's a girl." Suddenly, I was overcome with rage. My mother-in-law despised me for not giving birth to a boy. During a meal with my in-laws, the moment my mother-in-law said, "What a complete letdown of a woman!" a plate suddenly flew from where my father-in-law was sitting. What are you doing?" I was just shocked. I couldn't believe the usually mild-mannered father-in-law would throw a plate. This time, it seemed like my father-in-law turned the table on mother-in-law, which I must admit felt good. Next, my father-in-law yelled, "Enough! What right do you have to say such things? The child born has no sin. The real letdown of a woman is you." "What are you talking about? Don't joke around. A wife who can't give birth to a boy is like garbage. Such an insolent woman." "What are you, who only gave birth to boys? I wanted a girl, but you know, the child that was born has no sin. It doesn't matter if it's a girl or a boy." "There's no way it doesn't matter. Boy! Boy, boy, boy! Only boys have value. Worthless wife, worthless granddaughter, hopeless. See, you admit it, so you have nothing to say." I was holding back my tears, but at the moment when I was about to break down with a sound, "You! Enough already! Lisa has given birth to 2 children. What more do you want? They're not your children. You don't help raise them. You just demand a boy out of your own selfishness. If you want a boy that much, why don't you give birth yourself? Of course, that's impossible for an old woman like you." "Hey, stop it now. What you've been doing isn't just bullying. Even when you got an expensive chocolate, you said, 'I hate chocolate,' even though you can't afford to buy such a chocolate. When will you have a child? I don't need a girl. You're useless as a wife. Serve me. Send me money. Get a job and make money. You're getting carried away, you stupid-looking old woman." Then my brother-in-law clapped his hands, and after him, Paul also started clapping. Huh? What's going on? I didn't understand anything. "I'm a man, so I didn't get involved, but I'm surprised. My real mother is a professional daughter-in-law bully." "Huh? What are you talking about? I don't understand. Who's bullying daughter-in-law?" "You. There's no one else who would do that. I was almost abandoned by my beloved wife." "Huh? Men are insensitive and useless, brother. Absolutely. In comparison, women's intuition is terrifyingly accurate. You can't cheat." "Hey, what are you saying?" "It's obviously a joke, Sarah. Take over." "Roger? What? Are you guys some kind of fraudulent group? What do you think of your real mother?" "What do you mean, fraudulent group? You're talking about yourself." "What? Why me? You know a man named Mr. Brown, right?" "Huh? I don't know such a person. What are you talking about?" My mother-in-law was clearly flustered. She was trying hard to change the subject with an innocent look. Then, my sister-in-law continued the conversation. What's this daughter-in-law bullying circle? Huh? I don't know such a thing. Catch old mother-in-laws and invite them to the circle. Teach the members your invited techniques, traps, and ways to bully their daughter-in-laws. Every week you hold seminars and have a good time with the outrageous old ladies. You've been practicing the daughter-in-law bullying. You're a shitty mother-in-law. Invited by Mr. Brown, you were helping and aiding. Mr. Brown's aim was to earn money by holding seminars, but Mr. Brown was short of funds and was extorting you. You were extorting Lisa for money every month. When the money didn't come in as you expected, you vented your frustration on Mr. Brown and practiced daughter-in-law bullying. Do you think such a rotten, shitty mother-in-law will be forgiven? Mother-in-law? What does this mean? That's not true. Everything Sarah is saying is a lie. I want you to stop. Then what's this? My sister-in-law pulled out an envelope from her bag and showed the photo, and my mother-in-law's eyes were wide with surprise. This is a photo from your seminar, right? You're looking pretty friendly with Mr. Brown. And what's this? Walking arm in arm is strange, isn't it? This is unacceptable. I was confused by this unexpected event, but now I understand why you've been bullying Lisa. My wife is too strong-willed. You can't win against her. Stop joking around. I didn't know anything and let it slide, but it won't go unpunished. Misunderstanding! Enough. Let's stop. I haven't done anything. After all, you're just misunderstanding and overreacting. It's natural to have a few close friends. Then it happened. From the next private room, the voices of a few women laughing and talking could be heard. Hey, do you remember? Patricia from the 3rd District who was in the same class at elementary school? Ah, you mean that mean devil Patricia. I heard she got caught by a man and is giving him all her money. And apparently that man has started a mother-in-law harassment circle, where he invites mothers-in-law who want to harass their daughters-in-law and hold seminars or something. Oh, I know! Harassing her daughter-in-law? That's just the kind of thing that devil Patricia would do. And she's apparently investing money every month because the guy is short of money. She seems to be told that he'll return the money tenfold, but that's definitely impossible. That man has a family, and his daughter is disabled and living in a wheelchair. So she's being fooled by such a man and might destroy her own family? It's a wonder that her family hasn't collapsed so far. The face of the mother-in-law rapidly turned pale and stiffened. And then the father-in-law opened his mouth. Your life is over. What are you talking about? I've come this far without knowing what kind of woman you are. All the terrible things you've done to Lisa were simply because you are foolish as a person. Lisa, I am truly sorry. I apologize. It's not your fault. Please don't apologize. What? It sounds like I'm the one who's wrong. Just stop it! I haven't said anything wrong, and I've been complaining because my daughter-in-law isn't good enough. Don't blame me. She's such a terrible daughter-in-law after all. The terrible daughter-in-law is you. You got married, hiding everything from me, then demanded money from the kids when they became independent and give it to other men. You are a scammer, aren't you? A scammer? The fact that I have been serving you until now is true. It's a joke to be called a scammer for that. You've been serving me? What on earth have you done for me? I've been taking my shirts and suits to the dry cleaners myself and mostly have dinner outside, only returning home to sleep. That's right, when we were little, Mom wasn't at home, and dinner was like snacks or sweet buns. We always wondered where she was going. What are you talking about? Exactly. We were told not to tell Dad anything. We thought it was strange from that time. She didn't even come to school for portfolio days or interviews. When I was taking high school entrance exams, the only person who helped me was my teacher. I was in trouble because I didn't know which school to go to. I was moved when I ate good, homemade food for the first time after getting married. Supermarket side dishes were a luxury. How could a mother like that blame Lisa? Lisa is a hardworking mother and a good wife. Don't keep quiet. Say something. You can't say anything. You thought what you've been doing wasn't found out, so you got carried away. You had no idea that the conversation would turn into this today. I wouldn't keep quiet about this. I've been talking to my father-in-law for a long time. What did you say? You have to leave this house today. We're getting divorced. Divorce? Why is this happening? It can't be helped because Lisa is my child, right? They're so close they fight. Don't mess with me. Are you going to play me more? I also knew that you had been cheating on me since your 20s, but I kept quiet because of the children. That's why you can't get rid of the habit of cheating. You're walking arm in arm with a friend? I've never seen such a friend. It's over. Your life ends here. You can do whatever you want from now on. Wow, I didn't expect that. So that's why she wasn't at home. It's impossible not to have time to make dinner for your children. It's funny that such a person was pretending to be a good mother-in-law and complaining. It's not a joke. I've sold our house and all that's left is to submit the divorce papers. I've been fooled for a long time. Now I can live my own life, properly. You sold the house? What are you doing without my permission? I won't get divorced. No matter what you say, it's too late. I don't think I'll ever see you again. If you have any complaints, please contact my lawyer. Huh? What will happen to me from now on? I don't have a house. I don't have any money. How am I supposed to live? Why are you taking away my happiness at this age? You're the one who kept taking away Lisa's happiness. Before, you took it from me too. It's just that it's come back to you. Please rethink. I admit I was wrong, but please don't divorce me. Don't make me laugh at this point. It's decided. You have to leave the house tomorrow. I've warned you. The divorce is decided, so I'll go home now. Me too. My father-in-law had been pretending not to know about my mother-in-law's cheating habits since long ago. Thinking about my father-in-law's feelings made my heart ache. I can't imagine how much he loves his children. And finding out that he had been planning this divorce all along, I felt a bit relieved. I wanted my gentle father-in-law to lead a free life. I had always thought that when I saw my in-laws. Age has no bearing on life's choices, because my father-in-law should have a life of his own, and I was filled with gratitude towards my sister-in-law who helped me. I never thought she would consider so much for me. It made me realize once again how wonderful a family can be. I wanted to have a good relationship with my father-in-law in the future, so I wished to live with him. And I wanted him to interact with my daughter, his grandchild, who he hasn't seen much until now. It's a family restart from this age, but I want to make it the best life. When my father-in-law called me Lisa, I truly felt like we were family.
My name is Grace. I'm 63 years old. A few years ago, I lost my husband and now I'm living on my pension. However, it's not a lonely existence. I've been a part of a choir for years and I have many friends, so my life is rather lively. After caring for my husband during his lengthy illness, people tell me I seem to have found a new lease on life now that I'm no longer burdened with that responsibility. I loved my husband dearly and I would have preferred to have him by my side forever, so there are days when I'm struck by a profound sense of loss. But on those days, I talk to his photo on our home altar or sing my favorite songs, remembering how he used to smile and joyfully listen to my stories and songs. Plus, I have a little secret I keep from everyone. My husband left not just our home, but a substantial amount of money as well. I usually get by just fine on my pension, so I don't worry about it much, but knowing I have a nest egg for emergencies provides a certain sense of relief. I was thinking I would continue to live this free and easy life, but then my son and his wife, who had been stationed overseas, contacted me to say they were returning to the US. And what's more, they wanted to live with me after the return. I was delighted at the thought of seeing them face to face rather than just through video calls, and I looked forward to seeing my grandchildren. But there's one thing that has me worried. It was about my daughter-in-law, Mary. On the surface, she seems amiable and efficient, but I have an inexplicable aversion towards her. It feels like she's two-faced, or sometimes she scares me. But when I listen to friends talk badly about my daughter-in-law, I start to think that my feelings towards her stem from the jealousy I feel about her taking my son. Could it be generational prejudice? With a mixture of complex emotions and with the date of our reunion drawing closer, I reluctantly agreed to live with my son and his wife. I could not have imagined what was to come. It's been a while, mother-in-law. Please feel free to ask me anything. I'm planning to take care of you. Excuse me? As she spoke with a smile, I was taken aback. I didn't intend to be a burden to anyone. Or more than that, her saying she'll look after me feels condescending. At that time, I just thought, she doesn't know how to speak properly, but when we started living together, I realized my unease was well-founded. Mary acts very caring in front of others, but when it comes to something as simple as laundry, she behaves oddly. I noticed from the beginning that she seems to dislike mixing my laundry with hers, so I would wash my clothes separately. But I never imagined she would rewash the entire load just because one kitchen towel of mine was mixed in. As she grumbled and put the freshly washed laundry back into the machine, the item she held with such disdain was my kitchen towel. She tossed it aside like it was dirty and exclaimed, "It's going to smell like old woman, this is ridiculous." Another time when Mary wasn't around, I took in everyone's laundry after a brief rain shower. Despite them being almost dry, she rewashed them. "The germs will spread." Tisk tisk, her tongue clicking seemed to be her real nature. I didn't expect a thank you, but this was beyond anything I had imagined. "Do I smell bad by any chance?" I asked my friends, even used a smell detector. My friends laughed it off, and the detector showed much lower values than the standards. "Ugh, gross, don't put your shoes in my shoebox, it's filthy!" One day, Mary was removing my shoes from the shoebox with a pair of cleaning tongs. I didn't remember putting them in there, so my son must have thoughtfully done it for me. The heartwarming gesture from my son only fueled my anger at Mary's actions. "Please stop treating my shoes like they're filthy." When I asked this of her, who had tossed aside my shoes laughing, she turned around with a surprised look on her face. "Oh, mother-in-law. Well, I was just cleaning the shoebox and it looked like there was a bug on your shoes, so I tossed them." How she could come up with such an excuse on the spot is beyond me. "Oh, really? I didn't see any bugs. And you were using cleaning tongs, weren't you?" Maybe it was a mistake?" In the end, Mary played dumb and refused to acknowledge her wrongdoing, but the frustration didn't end there. She refuses to let my grandson eat anything I cook. No matter how hard I try to cook something nice, she rejects it with a smile. "You enjoy it yourself," and never touches it. Not only that, she interferes when my grandson tries to eat my food, always finding a reason to stop him. She freely uses the ingredients I buy without a word, always messing up my plans. She takes the ingredients but refuses the food. It seems she wants to exclude anything I have a hand in. In the end, the only person who enjoys my cooking is my gentle son. I'm sure he would listen if I talked to him about these issues and asked Mary to be more considerate. He's very much like his father, and I can rely on him. But I feel guilty bothering my son who works hard from early morning till late at night with such issues. I'd rather he relaxes when he gets home than be bothered by such things. For now, it seems that Mary has no intention of interfering with my son eating my cooking. Even if it's just my son, if he's happy to eat my cooking, I have to tell myself that's good enough. But, "Don't you dare eat anything your grandmother has made." Hidden from me, Mary was scolding our grandchild. "If you eat that stuff, you'll get sick, remember? Can't you hear me? Don't even think about eating grandmother's germ-ridden meals. I always tell you, don't I?" Stop berating the child for such unreasonable reasons. It's cruel. I had reached the end of my patience. I tell my teary-eyed grandchild to go outside and play and turn to confront Mary. "You always tell him not to eat my food, don't you?" "My mother-in-law, did you hear something?" Mary casually throws out the question. I heard it loud and clear. "Eating my food makes you sick? What do you mean by that stuff? We use the same ingredients from the refrigerator and the same seasonings in the kitchen. It's impossible that it could be harmful." But Mary just giggles. I've been tolerating the old woman's antics till now, but perhaps it's time I threw in the towel. It's heartbreaking how you can't understand how much I'm holding back. Despite trying to keep up appearances till now, it seems she no longer cares about showing her true natures. Mary crosses her arms, sniffs, and humps. "You're an old woman, nearing the end. You should just stay in your room or something and keep quiet. You're so full of energy, always out and about, cooking even when not asked, so selfish, and hoarding your property like a miser. I thought if we lived together, you'd at least share a little with me, but you're totally clueless." Mary frowns and spews one terrible word after another. Not satisfied, she stomps her foot and shouts, "Hey, anyone would understand if they just thought a little. What are you, a numbskull?" Shocked, I stood there. It's true, even my friends comment on my high energy. I love physical activity, not just singing, and often go out for walks. Being out and about is my own business, right? I don't have any expensive hobbies, and I'm not causing any trouble. If my cooking bothers you, I'll stop, but talking about my property is crossing the line. Am I a numbskull? Then what about your remarks? In fact, I'm totally fine with not living together. If you're not happy, you're the one who should leave. Despite using things I bought without paying me back, when I confront her, Mary laughs loudly. Look at Granny trying so hard to complain. If you want to kick me out, go ahead. But remember, while you're alive, you'll never see your precious son and grandchild again. With a threatening low voice, Mary leaves with a victorious laughter. Unbelievable. I never thought my daughter-in-law could be so rotten. But I've decided I don't need to hold back anymore. A week later, when I returned from choir practice, I heard Mary's laughter from the living room. Perhaps she was talking on the phone again, bad-mouthing me. You know, our old woman still hasn't kicked the bucket. She even went out for choir today, but honestly, it's a relief. She's an eyesore and noisy, but I can't die before her, right? She should hurry up and die, whether she ends up in heaven or hell. If only her heart would stop during choir practice. I was deeply disgusted by Mary, who was laughing vulgarly and lounging on the sofa while saying such dreadful things. But she seemed oblivious to my presence and continued to speak disturbing words in her crude laughter. Right? If she's going to disappear, she might as well drop dead outside in one breath. Actually, my husband's in the way too. Like you said, I've been increasing the salt content little by little, even secretly adding it to the old woman's food, but nothing changed. What? It takes years? That's annoying. We can't live together forever at this rate. Pouting, she spoke in a coquettish voice that made me clench my fists. I want to introduce a new daddy to our child soon. For that, I'll fight to seize the inheritance. This was unthinkable. Not only does she see me as an obstacle, this wicked woman was betraying her own husband. I stood beside my lounging daughter-in-law and shouted, "Get out now!" What are you? Startled, Mary tumbled off the sofa, appearing to hit something. So you're back, huh? Attempting to gloss over the situation, I reasserted my command to Mary, who was now forcing a laugh. Leave this place now. Just joking, mother-in-law, no way. Don't make me repeat myself. Stand up. At my command, Mary jumped to her feet. Of course she did. I was, after all, the former leader of a renowned choir group. I'd been holding back, practicing my vocal exercises at the riverbank during my walks and completely abstaining at home due to living with my son and wife. It wasn't unreasonable for her to be surprised, but I won't lose to anyone when it comes to lung capacity. Attention! Mary shuddered, probably loathing the idea of following my commands, but as someone who had long served in a leadership role, I knew how to command without leaving room for debate. Exit! Eek! Wide-eyed, Mary, clutching only her smartphone, hastily put on her shoes and bolted out the entrance. But, a formidable foe indeed, a few hours later Mary returned, grinning smugly after apparently seeking help from my son at work. Mother-in-law, have you calmed down? I mean, we were just having a lively conversation about a TV drama with my friends. It's so mean of you to misunderstand. It was astonishing to me that Mary could maintain such audacity even after what had happened just moments ago. However, I couldn't revoke what I'd already declared. I responded icily, "What do you want? I haven't departed for heaven yet, so it's pointless to come and check." No, mother-in-law, that's terrible, such a joke. No, Mary, I understand your true intentions very well. I had a vague idea, but thank you for spelling it out for me. Even with my old spinning head, I understood perfectly. Then, Mary, frustrated by my cold demeanor, started to say, "I told you it's a misunderstanding." I gave Mary a sweet smile in response. "You mean this, that you shared with my son?" What I revealed was a video of Mary on a call a few hours earlier. The audio was perfectly recorded. In choir, we regularly record videos, share them among the members, and discuss improvements. Even beyond the age of 60, such operations are a cinch for me. Mary likely thought an old lady like me couldn't possibly do something like this. Seeing Mary flustered and opening and closing her mouth like a fish, I pounced without mercy. You moved in with us, not just spreading bad rumors about the house owner, but planning to ostracize me, plus trying to harm my health by oversalting my meals. I knew something was off, but it was your doing, wasn't it? What? No, that's... Shame on you! I shouted at the top of my lungs for the second time that day. What? My son silently handed a divorce paper to Mary, who was now slumped down. My son, usually calm and gentle, becomes silent when he's angry, and that usually indicates an irreversible situation. Before the divorce papers written neatly in his handwriting, Mary began to tremble. No, listen, it's all a misunderstanding, right? I even followed you abroad, and I'm living together with you, right? We have a child, too. Isn't this too much? Hey, listen. Mary desperately clung to my son, but he silently shook off her hand with a heavy sigh, retreated back into his room. Mary, who had nowhere to go, sagged in disappointment. If I left her alone, she would probably freeze up like a rock. To Mary, I said, "It's not like my son was oblivious either. He'd been investigating why his overseas assignment was abruptly shortened and his appraisal downgraded." "What?" Ignoring the strange noise from Mary, I continued my story. "So you called your affair partner all the way overseas, and you even started commotion at the hotel you were staying at. The head of our business partner saw through it and misunderstood that you were fooling around with men. With his son's approval, it's no surprise you were removed from your position." Mary couldn't refute, as it seemed she remembered something. "That misunderstanding has finally been cleared up. It seems there's talk of you getting assigned overseas again. Do you understand? Even without our disagreements, it was already over between you and him. And no matter how kind he is, he wouldn't want to keep someone around who wishes he would disappear quickly. Here, pen and ink." I cut her off sharply and urged Mary to hurry up. Several weeks later, after the divorce proceedings and claims for damages were completed and things had settled down, Mary outrageously showed up at our house in broad daylight. She's really an unrepentant person. "Return my child!" Seeing Mary yelling with a loudspeaker in front of my gate, I felt dizzy. "Everyone, this mother-in-law here falsely accused me of things I didn't do and drove me, the daughter-in-law, out, even took away my son." The yowl of the neighborhood stray cat Miko can be heard along with the loud noise. As Mary continues her crying act, people passing by give her a wry smile. "At least please return my son. I painfully gave birth to him." Just as my son had taken my grandson out to the zoo for a change of scenery, to prevent my grandson from being upset, I stood up to silence Mary. "What do you think you're doing? Please go home. You're a nuisance." If an outsider saw this, I would probably look like the perpetrator, but I don't care. "Oh, mother-in-law, please stop. I can't live without my husband and son." "Your pathetic performance is quite a sight, all for naught, you know," I told her with a smile, and Mary suddenly fell silent. "Oh, is that so? Say something like that, you know. You'll need care eventually. I recommend trying to win me over while you can." Where does that confidence come from? I, the ever-changing one, don't understand. When I shouted back, I thought Mary would lose her patience and get angry, but instead she mimics crying. "You're so mean, mother-in-law." Like the crying woman in a movie, Mary dramatically yells, making me sigh. "Right, I did do something terrible to you. I'm sorry." As soon as I said that, Mary abruptly stopped crying and smiled smugly. "You finally understand. You have to cherish me." Sure, I really do feel bad. I meant to only share it with my son, but I accidentally, out of habit, sent the video to my choir friends too. I don't think you know, but our choir is large, and we have many members in the area. Some of them even have family members working at the police box, you know? "Oh, over here. Sorry for the trouble. This is Mary, who was plotting my son and my downfall. Couldn't you take her away?" I introduced Mary to the young police officer who rushed over. "What? No, why? No, I don't want to go to the police. Stop it!" However, there was no way the police would ignore her making such a fuss with a loudspeaker in front of her ex-husband's house. I had consulted with the police box beforehand about such a thing and had also apologized to the neighbors. So she had been laughed at from the start, not even knowing she was the crazy person playing the poor daughter-in-law. "Help me!" Mary continued her odd little play until the end, but I didn't receive any bad words from my caring neighbors and those who were concerned about my grandson. On the contrary, after my husband passed away, I was able to talk to some people who had become somewhat distant, and I was delighted with the unexpected gain. Afterward, Mary, who ended up penniless instead of inheriting anything, seemed to have been dumped by her lover and was seen loitering around our area a few times. However, she couldn't bear being laughed at and has stopped coming recently. According to rumors, she's now living a lonely life in a small apartment. As for me, I decided to accompany my son and grandson on his overseas assignment. I considered selling the house, but I want to have enjoyable conversations again with the neighbors I've grown fond of, so I'm renting it out. And my grandson seemed to have been afraid of Mary, who was easily irritable like a wicked witch when the two of them were together, and surprisingly, he easily accepted a life without Mary. I want my son to find a kind wife soon, so I felt reluctant to be with them as I might be an obstacle to a new encounter. But since my son and grandson rely on me, it seems that our days of gathering around a delicious table as a trio will continue for a while.